Welcome to the Sheridan Report on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. The Sheridan Report is brought to you by MyBookie.AG. Go to gruelingtruth.net, click on the banner at the top of the page, get up to a $1,000 cash bonus, up to 50% of what you deposit. I am your host for the Sheridan Report, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in Bobby Sheridan. How you doing, Bobby?
Hey, Mike, I'm doing good, and I'm ready to rebound off of a really poor Monday where both games in the NBA really let us down. You know, one had an excuse, Philadelphia. It was a late scratch of Ben Simmons, and we wouldn't have been on that game had we known that, and that happens sometimes. But the other had no excuse, and that was OKC. So we're looking to get two top plays today that are going to come home and get us back going in the right direction.
All right, and I know you have that for us, so what are those two top plays, Bobby?
All right, well, one of them I've been waiting for a while. I posted on Twitter, I think yesterday or I think it was last night, that I've been waiting for this game for a week, and that's absolutely true. And that game is the Heat and Magic game, and it has huge playoff implications, and I anticipated that. And you know, there's a big edge for Miami in this game, but let's first talk a little bit about where things have been at and why Miami I've been so keyed on. You know, Mike, there's only 5 or 6 teams. I'm going off of memory. I did all these stats in my head yesterday. There's only 5 or 6 teams in all of the NBA with a losing home record, and the Heat are one of them. Yet they're still positioned in the 8th spot to make the playoffs. And there's only 8 teams with winning road records, and that's Miami. So where I'm getting at is, well, you say, okay, this game's at home. I've been waiting for this team to translate their road form to their home form. And I think in no better situation could it be tonight than hosting Orlando in a game where, you know, they got to win it. They're only a half game ahead of the Magic for the last playoff spot. The Magic came strong on the homestand. They just went 5-0. Another key to this game is that Orlando just played last night. They were all in at home to finish off that homestand to beat Philadelphia, to beat our Sixers, and who we had last night, unfortunately. And Philadelphia was beating them at the half, 63-60, and Orlando played a huge third quarter and really blew them away. And so they were all in, and, well, they got to go travel now, not a far travel, but they got to go to the Heat and play on their home court. And Miami hasn't played since Saturday. So they've been rested a couple of days, and they're ready for this matchup. And I've been anticipating this, as has Miami, I think, for a while. And this is a game I think they have a lot of edges in. And Spoelstra, their coach, has just done a great job the second half, or well, not really a half, but since the All-Star break, which is about the last third of the year, has done a great job with his lineups and his rotations. And so much so that a guy that's playing really well for them on the bench now, big contract guy that's on the bench, Whiteside, he's played really well for them, yet in the matchup the other day against Washington, where Washington doesn't really have a lot of, any real big inside, went with a more athletic lineup, he only played 5 minutes. So this is how dialed in this guy is. He's playing the matchups, and he's playing strictly what gives them the best chance to win. And they want to win for Wade, and they want to get him in the playoffs on his swan song year. So really like Miami tonight. The line is 4.5, open 5.5. So I anticipated the dog getting the action. So we're down to 4.5. Now I think we can play it. It's a top play for me, and I think Miami wins this by double figures tonight.
All right. What's your other top play?
Well, we're going to parlay that. We're going to hit that one strong on a straight bet, and we're going to parlay. We're going to have a strong 2-team parlay going with the Lakers tonight. And, I would not have known the Lakers would be on our radar, 5-6 days ago, but things have kind of swung back to them in a betting perspective because their line, their value is at the greatest it's been all year. I mean, their power ranking is plummeted, and as it should. But, ironically, I think if you watch the game the other night, and I anticipated this, we had the Lakers the other night, That line came up like it did, a +2 at home, and this is a -2 at home over a team who's completely in the tank. Washington is done. Here's a little blurb on Washington. You know, they haven't done a morning shoot-around for 5 or 6 games now. And this is something that I've uncovered, and they haven't played since Saturday, so they traveled out here on the West Coast, and they canceled their shoot-around this morning. And that tells me they're a team that's done, in my opinion. And so they're going to go and play the Lakers tonight. And the Lakers, LeBron, he had a triple-double the other night, and his minutes have been cut short on the road. But to a man in the organization, they've talked about still wanting to win games, and the ones they want to win are at home for their fans who are still showing up. And they packed the place the other night on Sunday night, and they'll pack it again tonight. And LeBron talked about that. He talked about how that's important and how he needs to, you know, always respect the basketball gods and put his best product on the floor, however healthy and however well he can. And there's no doubt that he can carry them to a few wins here at home against this level of competition. Okay, we're talking about the non-playoff level teams. And JaVale McGee is going to be a big part of the game tonight. He's playing great basketball, just really, really well. And you're talking about among the best points, rebounds, blocks among centers, among the best over the last 2-3 weeks. So I think that combination of LeBron and McGee and getting some points from a couple of the scores that the Lakers need to get from it at home, wanting to win for the fans, and LeBron playing extended minutes to make that happen. He played the whole fourth quarter the other night, and he hadn't done that, Mike, in 3 weeks. So let's go with the Lakers, -2 against the team that's quit, the Wizards. Let's go 2-0 tonight in the NBA.
All right, Bobby. Anything NIT-wise tonight?
NIT, no. Yes, excuse me. Yes, I was thinking that other term of the CBI, which we had a loser with last night to end off our Monday. But no, yes, we do have an NIT pick tonight, and it's Creighton. I won't get into too much of the reasons why, but we like Creighton tonight. That line open, Creighton getting 4 against TCU, and it's down to 3.5. And I think that's the correct line movement. That may go down another little peg, so I would grab the 3.5. Take a little on the money line as well. I think Creighton's got a big shot tonight over TCU. And just as a little prelude, I love a game tomorrow in the NIT. And that's a game I've just been finished looking at the last couple hours, and we settled on a game tomorrow in the NIT, so wait for that one. And Mike, we have one other play tonight, and it's already on the Twitter and the website, and this will be our 4th game of the night, and it's the Rockets over the Bucks, and they're down to getting 3.5. That line's also dropped to half. So you've got it all right there, Mike. That's the 4 plays, and the 2 top plays, of course, are the ones we've talked about a lot, the Heat and the Lakers.
All right, Bobby. We are going to come back, of course, as always, with On This Day. We'll be talking about the 1979 NCAA Final and Tournament right after a word from MyBookie.AG.
Hi, I'm Mike Goodpasser from the Grueling Truth Sports Network, and I'm here with just one simple message. If you're watching the games, it's time to start making money. The Grueling Truth has recently partnered with MyBookie.AG, an industry-leading sportsbook website, who reminds you that where you bet is just as important as who you're betting on, and that's why the Grueling Truth urges you to check out MyBookie.AG. In addition to the usual thousands of odds, money lines, proposition bets, and futures offered on MyBookie.AG daily, they also have in-game live betting and a mobile site that makes wagering on the go easier than ever. So join now, and MyBookie will give you up to a free $1,000 cash bonus on your first deposit. Just enter promo code TGT50, that's TGT50, to take advantage of this offer. You can also go to thegruelingtruth.net, click the banner at the top of the page for MyBookie.AG, and also get the same benefit and the same $1,000 free cash bonus on your first deposit. So visit MyBookie.AG, courtesy of the Grueling Truth, and enjoy winning today. MyBookie.AG. You play, you win, you get paid.
All right, guys, I'm back with Bobby Sheridan. I'm Mike Goodpasser on the Sheridan Report. Bobby, what do we want to talk about today?
Oh, Well, Mike, today there was a few on this day that I like, but one trumps all, and anytime you see this one pop up, it's you got to talk about it, and it's 1979 on this day. It was the 41st NCAA Men's Basketball Championship, and Michigan State from the Big Ten played Indiana State in a classic, Bird and Magic. So, what do you got, Mike?
What do I got? I think this game is why we have March Madness. I mean, NBC's telecast of this game, if I remember right, received like an unbelievable ranking that's never really been equaled. I mean, they had a 24.1 rating. The only game that has come close to that was 1985 when Villanova played Georgetown, which was a 23.3. So that means on the night of the 1979 game, 2 of every 5 people watching television that night were watching that game, 40%. It was a huge leap forward for college basketball, and this is why we see the billions of dollars. I mean, the TV rights fees for the NCAA tournament more than tripled to $48 million when CBS replaced NBC in 1982. And then that contract again doubled to $96 million in 1995. And then in the late 90s, of course, it's $166 million. And now you're looking into billions. And this tournament wasn't just Bird and Magic, because you had a confluence or convergence of events here that made this maybe the greatest tournament ever. And that's because if you look at these brackets, there was 40 teams in the tournament at the time. That meant that you had, I think it was 4 teams in each of the 4 regions, 16 teams that had to play a play-in game. If
Wow.
you look at the East region, the East region was maybe the most upset-riddled region in the history of the NCAA tournament, because you had the 10 seed, the last team in, St. John's. They come out, they beat Temple 75-70. You drop down, Penn beats Iona 73-69. And I think that's the Iona team that Jim Balvano coached and Jeff Rulin, the old great Washington Bullet, played on. Now, when you get to it, they have to go forward and play the 1 and 2 seeds. Penn plays North Carolina and pulls a massive upset on a Saturday afternoon, 72-71. St. John's plays the number 2 seed Duke, coached by Bill Foster at the time. And St. John's upsets Duke 80-78. Now, to make matters even bigger is Georgetown and John Thompson were the 3 seed. They played Rutgers, who was the 6 seed. Rutgers beats Georgetown. So you've got a Sweet 16 matchup between a 6 and a 10, St. John's and Rutgers. And at the bottom, you've got Penn, the number 9 seed, and Syracuse, the 4 seed. Penn, from the Ivy League, upsets Syracuse 84-76. St. John's beats Rutgers 67-65. So you have a 9 seed Penn against a 10 seed St. John's to go to the NCAA Final Four. And those were the 2 lowest seeds possible back then, 9 and 10. Penn pulls off a huge upset to win by like 2 points. I think they won the game like 66-64 or 64-62. And then we go to the Mid-East region, and you've got Detroit gets upset by Lamar, who gets hammered by Michigan State and Magic Johnson. Michigan State basically owned this bracket. The only real upset in this bracket would have been Toledo, and a small upset beating Iowa. Notre Dame beats Toledo. Michigan State handles Notre Dame by 12. And then we get to the bracket with Indiana State. And Indiana State, like Michigan State, pretty much walk through until they get to the regional finals. The regional finals, they played Arkansas. Arkansas had Sidney Moncrief. And this game is a game where it came real close to Indiana State not even making the Final Four. Indiana State is in a tie game, 71-71, and I think there was like 40 seconds left. I watched this game a couple weeks ago, and the thing that stood out to me was Sidney Moncrief was one of the great defensive guards that ever lived. And when they came out of that timeout, Indiana State did with their coach Bill Hodges, they inbound the ball to Bird. All right, Bird gives it up and then starts running around to get open. Sidney Moncrief guarded him that entire 40 seconds and kept Bird from touching the ball. And it ended up Indiana State puts up a shot with like 2-3 seconds left. I think it was Heaton that put the shot up. It hits off the back of the backboard, goes straight up into the air, falls right back into the basket. Indiana State goes on to the Final Four, but I think it's missed here that we could have missed this. It could have been Moncrief against Magic. Moncrief was a great player, but it wouldn't have had the ramifications of a small school. And let's face it, the black superstar against the white superstar, which all played perfect. When you go to the West, this was the one time Ray Meyer didn't fail, because if you remember, Ray Meyer gets upset in 1980 by UCLA. He gets upset in 1981 by John Smith and St. Joe's with a buzzer shot. 82, 83, 84, they're fairly high seeds to get upset. But this year, they come in at DePaul. They beat USC. They beat Marquette, I think, by like 5 or 6 points. And then they played UCLA, and UCLA was actually the number 1 seed that year in 1979. DePaul upsets them 95-91 to go to the Final Four. And your Final Four is set up as the 9th seed, which is about as low as you can go, Penn from the Ivy League against Magic. And then we've got Indiana State against DePaul. DePaul had Mark Aguirre. They were a loaded team. And Larry Bird played out of his mind. I think he had a double-double. He scored in the 30s. Mark Aguirre played great. They had Clyde Bradshaw on that team. Indiana State beats them 76-74 to buzzer. The game before that, though, Michigan State played Penn, and it was never a game. I mean, it ended up 101-67. And that brought us to Bird and Magic. And Bird and Magic, Michigan State wins the game 75-64, if I remember correctly. But the thing that I remember the most about that game is the fact that the difference in the game, a lot of people say, well, it's because they had Greg Kelser. Indiana State only had one superstar. And a little bit of that's true. But the thing that really killed this game for Indiana State was the fact that they couldn't make free throws. I mean, Larry Bird, who was an absolutely great free throw shooter, I mean, I think he missed like 6 or 7 free throws in that game at least. I mean, I know he missed a lot. As a team, they missed a lot of free throws. And they trailed 10 to 15 points most of the game. I think they got it back to like 5 or 6 points with like a minute or two left. And then they just missing free throws. And if you miss free throws, you don't win. The other thing that was interesting about Indiana State is their coach, which was Bill Hodges. He wasn't even the coach the year before. He was an assistant, and Bob King was the coach. And Bob King, I think from what I remember, I can't remember if he got sick. I think he had a heart attack and had to leave the job. He was replaced by Hodges. And that Indiana team that year, they went to, I think, Purdue and beat Purdue by 10 points. Bird scored 40 points in the game. They went to Evansville, beat Evansville. A lot of people questioned how good the competition was for Indiana State that year. But when you look at it, Indiana State was a really good team. And Indiana State, they had Carl Nix as a guard. Steve Reed was the other guard. And then both of those guys were solid players. Who else was on that team? We had Bird, Nix, Reed, Brad Miley. Brad Miley was a guy that was a great player, Indiana high school basketball. He took Rushville to the state final in 1975. You had Alex Gilbert, who was as good a leaper, great as athlete as you're going to find. And then they had guys, I think Leroy Staley, who was another great leaper, who played in that game. And then Bob Heaton. And the interesting thing is, I think Bob Heaton was the guy that they played New Mexico or New Mexico State towards the end of the season, and they were undefeated. They were down by a point. And Heaton throws a shot up from like three-quarters court and makes it at the buzzer, which is what kept Indiana State undefeated. And then Heaton is the guy that hits the shot at the buzzer to beat Arkansas, so he was a huge part of that. But when you look at it, I mean, Indiana State's free throw shooting in that game, they were 10 for 22. They missed 12 free throws. Bird was 5 for 8, so he missed 3 free throws. Michigan State was a team that, of course, was led by Magic, but Greg Kelser was a great player. Ron Charles, Terry Donnelly, and Terry Donnelly was maybe the most important player in that championship game because you know that the Stars are getting their points. But Terry Donnelly came out, and with no three-point line, I think he made all 5 of his shots. I think he made 5 or 6 free throws. He scored 15 points. And I think that Donnelly was the guy that people forget about that was hugely important in that game. And then I think the fact that you look at it, Carl Nix, if I remember right, in the last 5 or 6 minutes, fouled out of the game, which really hurt him. I think Reed was in foul trouble the whole game and had 4. And as we see, college basketball from there just kind of took off. And the thing that made Bird and Magic so great was the fact that they go to the pros, and they had the same effect, because I think people forget, like 1980, 81, even up to 1982. I remember 1982. I was a huge 76ers fan because I loved Dr. J. And he's playing the Lakers in the finals, and it was on a Friday night, and it was tape delayed, so I had to put off watching it. But the interesting thing was Game 7 would have been on Sunday. That would have been very bad for me, because Game 7 on Sunday was at the same time that my sister was graduating from high school.
Oh, wow.
So I'd already started a couple days before this Game 6, planting the seed that, maybe I should just stay home. And I was told there's no way you're staying home. But in the end, I think the Lakers beat the Sixers like 120 to 106 or something, and won the series in 6 games, so I didn't have to face that, because we all know my unhappy ass would have been at my sister's graduation instead of seeing Game 7 of that series. But you get the 83 Sixers-Lakers, everything is live from then on out. The TV contract more than doubles. And then you've got the 84 finals, which I think put the NBA through the roof with Bird and Magic. So everybody wants to give you this Michael Jordan's the reason basketball is huge. Michael Jordan wouldn't have been as big as Michael Jordan ended up being if it wasn't for Bird and Magic.
Right. And Michael Jordan himself has stated that. I mean, he's acknowledged that, and been very respectful of Bird and Magic, of course, and then he kind of took it from there, and then now I guess we've got LeBron and things. But, I was thinking back to that Sixer game. So then that Game 6, there was no Sunday game, Game 7. That Game 6 was the Magic game where he played center, right?
No, actually the Magic game was in 1980 in Game 6.
Oh, okay, so we're fast-forwarding to 82. Okay.
Yeah. 1980, Game 6 is where Magic, I think he scored 42 points, had 7 assists, and like 14 rebounds. Because Kareem always had migraine issues. I mean, in the 85 finals he did in like 3 or 4 games. The thing was, every game in 85 where he had a migraine, he played out of his mind and they won. Where in 82, he didn't make the trip because they were assuming that Game 7 would be at the Forum and they would be fine to just keep him back and let him rest instead of playing. Instead of playing a Friday game at 8 and then hitting a red eye at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, getting back Saturday and then having to play on Sunday. They left him behind. And you got to remember, 1980, the fact that they could play Magic at center instead of point guard, a lot of that had to do with the fact that you had Norm Nixon still on the team, who was a great player.
Right. Great point guard.
But,
so the Lakers won it at the end 82, and then the Sixers got their revenge when they got Moses Malone, right? That would be 83.
Yeah, the thing about that is they got the revenge, and the thing I remember about those games, I think that the Lakers led in all 4 games at halftime. The big killer for them was 1983, James Worthy was a rookie, and he got hurt and couldn't play in the finals.
Oh, that was huge.
I don't think it would have mattered with that team with Moses Malone, though, because that was a great team.
So they were on a mission. They got Malone was dominant, and he dominated Jabbar.
Yeah, plus you had one of the greatest backcourts in NBA history that people don't remember, and that's Andrew Toney and Maurice Cheeks. You had one of the best defensive forwards in NBA history in Bobby Jones. And then, of course, you had Mark Ivoroni.
And Ivoroni. And that was Dr. J's only championship. Is that right?
Yeah, in the NBA, it was his only championship was 1983.
NBA, right.
I remember I was always upset when they would lose because I loved Dr. J.
Mike, let me ask you this question. In that famous scene that they show where he rocks the baby to sleep on the dunk,
Yeah.
Was that the year they won it in '83, or was that a scene from one of the?
That was '83, because he didn't get up like he used to. But yeah, '83 was that, and then you've got, I think the '80 finals is the one where you see him where he's going in for the layup on the one side, and a defender comes out of nowhere, and he switches to his left hand and comes out the other side and lays it in.
Yeah, but the Lakers won that series. That was the '80 series. I think you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, and the thing is, Dr. J was huge for him because, the dunk contest.
Yeah.
And the dunk contest came into effect because of the ABA, because they're the first ones that ever did the dunk contest.
Yeah. That's right. I had a question for you regarding the '79. My mind was drifting back, and Judd Heathcote was the coach of Michigan State, as we all know, and he continued on, I think, another, I don't know how long after.
Oh, yeah, he was still coaching them in '86 to the Sweet 16 when they had Scott Skiles.
Right. So he continued on, some years, another 6-8 years. And I remember Bobby Knight would speak well of Judd Heathcote, but what kind of coach was he really?
Well, he's a great coach. I mean, he won a national championship at Michigan State. If you look at him, the thing that's interesting, in 1986 with Scott Skiles, the thing that got me was, people forget this, but in Kansas, they lost in double overtime to Kansas. Let me reiterate that. They lost to Kansas at Kansas, and there was a clock malfunction at the end of the game that pretty much cost him winning that game. I think they would have won that game without that. I think Heathcote coached until the mid-'90s at Michigan State. I think it was like 95 or 96. The interesting thing about Judd Heathcote is this, though. Montana played Michigan Michigan in a tournament last week, right?
Michigan, right, yeah.
All right. Now, if you look at Montana's NCAA tournament history, you'll see one regional semifinals and a close loss to UCLA. That was in 1975, and the head coach of that team was Judd Heathcote. So Heathcote had them within a couple points of beating John Wooden in the Sweet 16 in his final run, where they ended up beating Kentucky in the Final Four or in the national championship game.
Okay, so he parlayed that and got the Michigan State job.
Yeah, because I think he was I think his last year at Montana was 1976, and then, or it might have been 75. He might have went right after that.
Yeah, very neat. And another memory I had as you were talking about Indiana State was, this is 2019, of course, and this is the 40th anniversary. And I remember seeing on Twitter, they acknowledged that team, of course. It's the greatest team they've ever had, Indiana State. But they all were there at the center court this year during one of the home games, and Bird was there. And I just remember reading some of the articles of the day, at the game, and just how that group has remained close even to this day. That whole group.
Yeah, and I think the thing that stood out to me was Bird wasn't a one-man show on that team. I mean, everybody thinks that was just Larry Bird, but I mean, the interesting thing is this: the year after that, in 1980. Indiana State had a better record than Michigan State. Now, I know you're going to say, well, they didn't play there, but the other thing is this, though. The Soviet national team played Indiana State, and the Soviet national team was a hell of a team back then. And, I mean, ISU beat the Soviet Nationals, I think, in November of '78, headed into that '79 season. And that Soviet team came over here and played like 15 or 16 Division I basketball programs, and only 4 teams successfully beat them out of the 15 or 16 that year. So Indiana State was a hell of a team. And like I said,
that year, you're talking about the next year, right? 1980?
No, I'm talking about 1979. Going into that season, they beat the Soviets.
Oh, okay, that season. Because, I remember on YouTube probably 6 or 7 years later, the Soviet team came and played at Assembly Hall, and that's the game that Knight pulled the team off the floor.
Yeah, that was in '88, I believe, because they played them before that. Because I know Risley talked about the first game he ever played at IU was against the Soviets. But yeah, you got to go on YouTube Because I think YouTube's got the 50-foot shot that Bob Heaton hit to keep Indiana State undefeated. But they were down by 2, and if New Mexico State makes the free throw, Indiana State's perfect season's gone. But they missed a shot, and Brad Miley, who I talked about was from Rushville, throws the ball to Heaton, who banks a 50-footer in at the buzzer, and they win the game in overtime.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's amazing. Great look back, Mike. And I didn't know many of the little tidbits that you threw out there, so I'm glad we talked about that. And here we are. We're getting ready to embark on a new one. And you're going to be in Louisville Thursday, and I'm going to be in Anaheim.
Yeah, the Grueling Truth will have credentialed media at 2 of the 4, and it would have been all 4, but I didn't know that we were that big now, but I guess we are.
Mike, I appreciate that, and I will do a good job for you. I'll send you something over, and I'll be reporting back, and I'm going to take it very appreciatively and seriously. I'll go down there and watch those 2 games, and I'm going to enjoy that, and the Grueling Truth, I'll get the word out, and it's going to be neat.
All right, Bobby. So we're going to wrap it up for today. Make sure you go hit that parlay on MyBookie.AG. Click the GruelingTruth.net banner to get through to it. Make sure you follow Bobby Sheridan at the SheridanReport.com. Also at Sheridan Report on the internet. $10 a day gets you hit the Sheridan Report sheet. $50 a month. So make sure you get that. Parlay that with the MyBookie.AG off the Grueling Truth, and you'll get up to a $1,000 cash back bonus on 50% of what you put in. So if you put $2,000 in, you'll be playing with $3,000. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Tomorrow, Survive in Advance will be back at noon with Mac Lipister, NFL agent. We'll talk a little NFL. We'll talk a little bit about what Max has been doing. And then, of course, we'll be back with the Sheridan Report tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify. You can find us anywhere you find sports podcasts. So, for Bobby Sheridan, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.